A number just crossed a line that hasn't been crossed in years, and almost nobody watching the stock market noticed it happen. It didn't happen on Wall Street. It happened inside a vault in New York, behind a door most Americans will never see, but where men in suits count bars of silver the way a grocery store counts cans of soup. And what they counted this summer should worry anyone who has ever opened a retirement statement and felt their stomach drop. Because right now, the amount of silver sitting inside COMEX warehouses that is actually available to be delivered, real metal ready to hand over, has fallen below a level that traders quietly consider a warning line. Not a headline, not a press release. A warning line. And on the other side of that line sit some of the biggest banks in the world, banks that bet silver would stay cheap, banks that are now watching that bet get more dangerous by the week. This is the story of that number, why it dropped, who it threatens, and why some analysts believe what happens next in silver could ripple into gold, into the dollar, and into the retirement account of someone who has never even bought a single ounce of the metal. If you care about protecting your money from inflation, from the Fed, from a financial system that doesn't always tell you the full story, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Money Insights and hit like, because every single week we take stories like this one and break them down in plain English. No jargon, no hype, just the facts and what they might mean for you. Let's start with the vault. Every futures exchange in the world runs on a promise. If you buy a contract for silver, you are promising to eventually take delivery of real silver, and the seller is promising to hand it over. Most of the time, nobody actually swaps metal. Traders roll their contracts forward, take their profits or losses in cash, and the silver just sits there in the warehouse, untouched, doing its job as a kind of insurance policy behind the paper. But that insurance policy only works if the vault actually has enough silver in it to back up every promise being made. And here is where the story gets interesting. COMEX divides its silver into two buckets. The first is called eligible silver. That's metal sitting in the vault that meets exchange standards but isn't officially pledged to anyone. Think of it as silver on the shelf, available but not yet spoken for. The second bucket is called registered silver. That's metal that has been formally committed, warranted, ready to be handed over the second someone demands delivery. As of the end of July, registered silver inventory in COMEX vaults sat at just under 100 million ounces. That might sound like a big number, it isn't. Compare it to the total amount of paper silver being traded against it. Futures contracts representing tens of millions of ounces changing hands every single day. And that 100 million ounce buffer starts to look uncomfortably thin. Here's the part most people miss. Registered inventory had actually been crawling back up in July, but it only crossed back above 90 million ounces in late June, and analysts who track this data closely have flagged the coverage ratio, the amount of registered silver compared to total open contracts, as sitting in what they call stress territory. That phrase should stop you for a second. Stress territory, not crisis, not collapse. Stress, like a bridge that's still standing but an engineer just noticed a hairline crack in the support beam. So why does a crack in a warehouse ledger matter to you? Because silver isn't just a shiny metal collectors put in a safe. It's wired directly into the modern economy in a way most people never think about. It's inside the solar panels, being bolted onto rooftops across the country. It's inside electric vehicle batteries, and the charging infrastructure being built to support them. It's inside the servers and cooling systems, powering the artificial intelligence boom that every tech company is racing to build out. Silver is one of the best conductors of electricity on the planet, and there is no substitute that does the job as efficiently at scale. Which means every time the world builds another solar farm, another EV plant, another AI data center, it is quietly eating into the same limited pool of physical silver that traders are fighting over in New York. And that brings us to a number the mining industry itself has been sounding the alarm about. Industry estimates point to 2026 marking a sixth consecutive year in which the world has consumed more silver than it has mined and recycled combined, with the shortfall estimated in the tens of millions of ounces. 6 years in a row. Not one bad year. Not a fluke, a pattern. Think about what that means in ordinary terms. Imagine a small town where every household uses slightly more water than the reservoir refills each year, 6 years running. At first, nobody notices, because there's a stockpile built up from decades past. But stockpiles aren't infinite. Eventually, the town has to start asking a very uncomfortable question. What happens when the buffer runs out? That's the question now hanging over the silver market. And it's why COMEX inventory has become something bigger than a technical data point. It's become a signal. But here's where everything changes, because inventory numbers alone don't explain why banks specifically are watching this so closely. To understand that, you have to understand who's actually short. For decades, a small group of enormous financial institutions, commonly grouped together by analysts as the largest commercial traders on the exchange, has held an outsized share of the bets that silver prices will fall or stay flat. These aren't small speculators. These are trading desks inside some of the largest banks on earth. For years, this arrangement worked fine because these banks weren't making a naked bet. Many of them held physical silver in London vaults or had production agreements with mining companies, effectively hedging their New York paper bets with real metal elsewhere. It was a quiet, profitable balancing act that had run smoothly since before most people trading silver today were even born. Almost nobody noticed this balancing act depended entirely on one assumption, that physical silver would always be available in London whenever it was needed to offset a squeeze in New York. That assumption is now being tested. Reports through the middle of 2026 have pointed to inventories at the London Metal Exchange also sitting near historic lows, with much of the silver technically in London vaults already allocated to exchange-traded funds, central banks, and industrial clients, meaning it isn't actually free to move even though it shows up on a spreadsheet as being there. Analysts have started calling this the difference between silver that exists on paper and silver that exists in reality, sometimes described as the difference between the total float and the truly unencumbered float, the metal that could actually be grabbed and shipped to New York in an emergency. When that unencumbered float shrinks at the same time, COMEX registered stock is thin, the old hedge that protected short-selling banks for decades starts to look a lot less reliable. Now here's the part that turns this from a slow-moving story into something with real urgency. In March of this year, during a routine but closely watched delivery cycle, COMEX faced what several financial outlets described as unprecedented delivery stress. Registered stocks had fallen to some of their thinnest levels in the exchange's history, relative to how many ounces traders were demanding be delivered rather than rolled over. Reports at the time noted that the exchange reportedly offered cash incentives to traders willing to close out their positions instead of insisting on physical delivery, a practice sometimes referred to informally as cash for delivery. If that sounds like a polite way of saying, please don't ask for the metal we might not fully have, you're not wrong to notice that. During that same period, reporting indicated an interesting split formed among the major banks. JP Morgan, according to multiple reports, had shifted toward a net long position in late 2025, meaning it was positioned to benefit if silver prices rose. Meanwhile, institutions including HSBC, UBS, and Barclays reportedly remained under pressure holding significant short exposure, meaning a continued rise in silver prices would hurt them financially. One of the largest banks in the world had, in effect, switched sides in a market it has quietly influenced for generations. That single detail deserves a moment to sink in. This isn't a story about small retail traders getting caught off guard. This is a story about some of the most sophisticated financial institutions on the planet, with access to information and analysis most of us will never see, disagreeing sharply about where this market is heading. When the smartest players in the room can't agree, that's usually a sign something structurally unusual is happening beneath the surface. History offers a strange parallel here, and it's worth walking through carefully because it shows both what a real squeeze looks like and why regulators became so cautious about letting one happen again. Back in 1980, two brothers connected to a wealthy Texas family attempted to corner the silver market by buying up enormous quantities of physical metal and futures contracts. Silver prices spiked to roughly $50 an ounce, an almost unimaginable level at the time, before exchange officials changed the rules mid-game, restricting trading in ways that caused the price to collapse violently within days. Fortunes were wiped out. The event became a cautionary tale still taught in finance classes today. The lesson regulators took from it wasn't just about greed, it was about how exchanges hold the power to change the rules when a squeeze threatens the system itself. That power still exists today, and it's part of why serious analysts are careful to say a genuine short squeeze in 2026 is not guaranteed, even with inventories this thin. Exchanges have tools. Margin requirements can be raised overnight to make speculative positions too expensive to hold, as happened briefly during the huge price surge and subsequent pullback around the end of 2025. Rules can shift. The system has defenses. Markets often react to thin supply the same way a crowded theater reacts to a whisper of smoke. Nobody knows yet if there's a real fire, but everybody starts moving toward the exit at once, and that movement itself can become the story. So where does that leave the price of silver right now? And why should an ordinary family watching this feel anything other than confused? As of the beginning of August, silver has been trading in the high $50 range per ounce, up dramatically over the past year, but well off the record high of $121.64 an ounce it briefly touched in late January of this year. That's not a small pullback. That's silver falling by roughly half from its peak and then stabilizing, a wild swing that few investors saw coming and even fewer fully understood while it was happening. Unexpected statistic worth sitting with. Silver is still up more than 50% compared to a year ago, even after that dramatic pullback. Most people checking their bank account interest rate this year have not seen anything close to that kind of movement, for better or worse. What caused the crash from the January peak? Largely the Federal Reserve. Silver had rallied hard through most of 2025 on expectations that the Fed would cut interest rates aggressively, weakening the dollar and making non-yielding assets like silver and gold more attractive. But in March, the Fed held rates steady and revised its outlook to suggest only one rate cut for the year instead of several, a notably more cautious stance than markets had been pricing in. That hawkish surprise hit silver especially hard, dropping nearly 20% from its weekly high in a matter of sessions, even sharper than gold's decline over the same stretch. This is a pattern worth remembering because it will likely repeat. Silver tends to amplify whatever gold is doing in both directions. When optimism about lower rates returns, silver often runs further and faster than gold. When the Fed disappoints those hopes, silver often falls further and faster too. If you're trying to understand where silver goes next, the Federal Reserve's own words about interest rates matter just as much as anything happening inside a COMEX vault. Picture the vault itself for a second, because it's worth seeing clearly. Rows of steel shelving stacked with 100-ounce bars, each one stamped with a refiner's mark, sitting under fluorescent light behind reinforced concrete. Auditors walk these rows with clipboards, counting bars the way a librarian counts books, except every book missing from the shelf represents real money moving somewhere else in the world. That image, quiet, mundane, almost boring, is exactly why so few people notice when the count starts shrinking. There are no sirens, no breaking news alert, just a slightly smaller number in a government filing that most Americans will never open. Now contrast that vault with a rooftop in Arizona, or a solar farm stretching across the Texas plains, or a battery plant humming along in the Midwest. That's where the silver from that vault, or vaults like it, is actually headed once it leaves. Every panel catching sunlight, every EV charging in a driveway overnight, is quietly drawing down the same finite pool of metal that traders in New York are fighting over on paper. The vault and the rooftop are connected by a supply chain most people never think to trace, but the connection is real, and it's tightening. Why does any of this matter to a parent packing lunches, or a retiree checking a pension statement, or a young worker just starting to put money into a 401k? Because silver and gold have historically served as a kind of financial shock absorber during periods when trust in paper money or the broader financial system wavers. When inflation erodes the buying power of a paycheck, when currencies weaken, when geopolitical tension spikes, precious metals have often, though not always, held their value or risen while other assets struggled. That history is exactly why central banks around the world have themselves been steady buyers of gold in recent years, and why some governments have started treating silver as a strategic resource rather than just a commodity. Think about what a shrinking paycheck actually feels like at the grocery store. A cart that used to cost a certain amount now costs noticeably more for the exact same items, week after week. That lived experience, the quiet frustration of a dollar buying less than it used to, is the same force that has historically pushed some investors toward metals that can't simply be printed by a central bank. A retiree living on a fixed pension feels that squeeze differently than a young worker still earning raises, but both are exposed to the same underlying question, whether the money they're holding today will still buy what they need it to buy years from now. None of this means silver is a guaranteed answer to that question. It isn't, and anyone promising a guaranteed answer in financial markets should be treated with suspicion. But understanding why institutions, and increasingly certain governments, have started paying closer attention to physical metals helps explain a pattern showing up across many parts of the financial world right now, not just in one chart or one headline. Which brings us to a hidden connection most coverage of this story misses entirely. In January of this year, China's Ministry of Commerce introduced a new licensing system that sharply restricts which companies are allowed to export silver out of the country, replacing an older quota system that had been in place since the year 2000. Under the new rules, Chinese exporters must prove years of export history and meet strict capacity and financial requirements just to qualify. Only a small number of firms made the cut for the current licensing period. On the surface, that looks like a bureaucratic policy change. Underneath it, it looks like a country with massive industrial demand for silver, solar panels, electric vehicles, electronics, quietly making sure more of the metal stays inside its own borders instead of flowing out to the rest of the world. China's silver imports actually surged to an 8-year high in early 2026, even as its exports were being tightened, a country simultaneously buying more from outside while restricting what leaves from inside. That's not the behavior of a nation that thinks silver is just another industrial input. That's the behavior of a nation treating it like a resource worth stockpiling. And almost as if answering that move, mid-2026 brought the launch of a new silver futures contract based in Singapore, specifically designed around physical delivery rather than the paper-heavy structure that has defined COMEX in London for decades. Some analysts see this as the first real crack in New York and London's decades-long grip on how the world prices silver, a sign that the era of paper contracts dictating the price of a physical metal that's growing scarcer may not last forever. Put those two moves side by side and a bigger pattern starts to emerge. A major industrial power tightening its grip on domestic silver supply while a new, physically backed trading venue opens up on the other side of the world. That's not a coincidence, born of one policy meeting or one earnings call. That looks like the early architecture of a world where physical delivery, not paper promises, starts to matter more in how silver actually gets priced. Whether that shift plays out over years or over decades is impossible to say with certainty right now, but the direction of travel is hard to ignore. Here's the reality check, and it's an important one, because this story could easily spiral into fear, and fear is not the goal here. Understanding is. A short position on COMEX does not automatically mean a bank is reckless or doomed. Many of these institutions carry offsetting physical holdings, forward agreements with mining companies, or other hedges that make their real economic exposure far more complicated than a single short position number suggests. Some financial analysts, including strategists at major banks like UBS, have characterized the current inventory tightness as likely temporary, tied to short-term trade policy uncertainty and delivery logistics, rather than a permanent structural collapse in supply. In other words, the honest, measured answer is that the conditions for a serious squeeze appear to be building, but a confirmed market-breaking squeeze has not actually happened yet. That distinction matters enormously if you're thinking about your own money. The setup is real, the tension is real, the banks watching that vault number are absolutely real. But markets can stay tense for a long time without breaking, and betting your entire financial future on a single dramatic prediction, whether that prediction promises silver at $300 an ounce or a total systemic collapse, is exactly the kind of thinking that has burned investors throughout history. Instead, what this story really offers is a lesson in paying attention to signals most people never see. The everyday shopper filling a cart doesn't watch COMEX warehouse reports. The retiree checking a 401k statement doesn't track the difference between eligible and registered silver stocks. But the underlying forces driving this story, industrial demand from solar and AI infrastructure, a structural mining deficit stretching back 6 years, a major economy quietly restricting exports while increasing imports, and a group of banks now split over which direction the market is heading. All of that reflects something bigger than one metal's price. It reflects a global economy where physical, tangible resources are being tested against a financial system built largely on paper promises. So back to where we started. Banks are watching that COMEX vault number because it represents the thin line between a system that has worked smoothly for decades and one where physical scarcity finally forces a reckoning between paper and metal. Whether that reckoning arrives as a dramatic squeeze, a slow structural repricing, or simply fades as new supply and new delivery routes like the Singapore contract ease the pressure, nobody can say with certainty. What we can say is this: the number in that vault dropped low enough to change how the world's biggest financial institutions are positioning themselves, and that alone tells you this isn't a story about a shiny metal anymore. It's a story about trust, scarcity, and what happens when the two collide. Watching that vault number won't make anyone rich overnight, and it shouldn't. But understanding what it represents, industrial demand colliding with mining shortfalls, banks quietly disagreeing with each other, nations rewriting their own export rules, gives you something more valuable than a hot tip. It gives you a clearer lens for reading every headline about gold, silver, and the Fed that comes next. If you learned something new today, make sure to subscribe to Money Insights and like this video. More powerful financial insights are coming next.